Solo campaign. There's only one player name you have to remember.
Welcome, intrepid travelers. My name is Philip, the Reasonable Game Master, and we're talking about something very near and dear to my heart today, and that's solo campaigns. When I was growing up, my best friends and I played tons, dozens of solo campaigns, like many dozens of solo campaigns. I lost count of how many in all kinds of different settings, and it was because we didn't have a lot of people to play with. It was mostly just the three of us, and oftentimes only two of us were there, so one of us would DM and one of us would play. Mostly I was a player, and some of the greatest gaming experiences of my life were solo campaigns. So yeah, I think it's a great way to play, especially if you have limited players available. More players can be fun too, but so what exactly is a solo campaign? Basically, there's one DM and one player, and that's it, right? And so it's a very focused experience, right? It's a little bit like playing a video game where, it's always your turn. If you're playing with three or four people, you got to share that time, and sometimes you guys split up and different people have the spotlight. But in a solo campaign, spotlight is all that players, right? The most important thing in a solo campaign is communication, right? Communication is great in all situations. When there's only one player, you need to know what that player wants to do. Maybe they don't know, and maybe they want to leave it all in your hands, but having that conversation beforehand is good. Even a new player may have a lot of ideas about what they want to do, Just asking them whether they prefer combat, exploration, or, social encounters, and you guys can talk about that, and you can use that information to design your campaign. And also, after kind of initially deciding what you're going to do, it's good to just follow up, maybe not every game, but every few games, just make sure that they're having fun. Ask them if they have any favorite moments, least favorite moments, and then you can modify the experience by, adding more of the favorite stuff and taking away some of the unfavorite stuff, right? Unfavorite. All right, the next thing we're going to talk about is story. All right, story in a solo campaign should be more important, right? You have one player and it's their story, basically, right? Well, let's back up a little bit, right? So you need to talk to your player about what kind of story they want to play in, right? Do they want an open world experience, lots of quests, and they choose what quests and they go on it? Or would they like to be on some kind of epic quest that you've designed for them, and you are kind of guiding them down that path, right? As like the writer of the Hunger Games or the writer of Harry Potter, you kind of know the beginning and the end. The hero character kind of decides how they get there. Some players may not want too much freedom. Maybe they're a new player and they're like, I don't know. That's perfectly possible and perfectly reasonable an answer. I don't know. People are sometimes afraid of saying I don't know, but it's good to know when you don't know and to admit that. All right, and then deciding. If they do have an idea, then deciding what kind of campaign they want to do. There's all kinds of great campaigns that really fit a solo campaign, right? If they want to be a gladiator and they're working their way to become the champion and they want to be gladiator one, it's a cool campaign. Maybe they don't want to be a warrior. Maybe they want to be maybe they want to be a cleric, an evangelist, and they're spreading the word about their deity, and helping push along those agendas. That can be interesting. Definitely be a new experience for a lot of DMs, I think. Or maybe they want to be a wizard or an apprentice wizard at the nearest wizarding university, right? A lot of great opportunities there for like a solo campaign in there. And again, very different than what you might expect, right? Or they could want to be a thief that's in kind of an Indiana Jones type campaign where they're finding all these lost cities and hidden treasure. There's a lot of great hooks. Any movie where there's like a primary hero is great fodder for adventures for a solo campaign, right? For preparation, remember that the story will probably move along a little bit faster than if you had a group, right? Decision making will go much faster. There won't be as many sessions where the players are just shopping in town, doing the things that they want to do individually. Like, oh, this player wants to go to the tavern every time he comes to a new town, or this player is always trying to find the nearest alchemist and see what kind of potions are available, right? It could be that your player will want to do all of that stuff, but If not, things could move along much quicker than you expect. So try to plan the story out a little bit further in advance and talk to them about their plans going forward a little bit further in advance. Another aspect of the story, make sure that they're okay being like the center of attention and being like, the chosen one if you're making them the chosen one. Maybe they just want to be a regular guy doing the regular guy thing. And maybe they don't want all the weight of the fate of the world on their shoulders, right? And maybe they just want to explore, their character a little bit, I've had situations where a campaign ends and a particular player's backstory wasn't fully fleshed out in the campaign, and it's like, I and the player are interested in seeing what will happen, right? And then we'll run through a little campaign to find out what that would be like, and answer some of those questions, like tie up some of those loose ends. And I think it's a fun way to do that. So if you have a player like that, you can use their character's backstory and you talk to them about what parts of that backstory they want to explore, and then build the story around that. Make sure the player's okay with like the way the story is going. If you're taking them down a road where they're suddenly like in line to be king of the kingdom, and they're not down with that, have a conversation. Make sure that your grandiose ideas match what they're interested in exploring. So you guys stay on the same page, keep up that communication, which is vital. All right, another thing that intersects with communication in the story are the characters that you use to tell the story, right? The NPCs. How do you use NPCs differently in a solo campaign? Well, for one thing, NPCs are the only people that the player's going to have to interact with. And so, while I don't think that it's a good idea necessarily to try to complete the party with NPCs on your own, I mean, that can be a temptation to have like a balanced party that, based on the mechanics of the game will make the game easier. But I think like some people are afraid of like having, say, a wizard campaign, right? A wizard by himself. Like, isn't he gonna have a lot of trouble? Isn't he gonna, without a tank to protect him, and to be without a tank to protect him, isn't that wizard just gonna get smashed? And, he's not gonna be able to keep up his concentration. It's gonna be very difficult, right? But I think that's an opportunity. That's an opportunity to create like these really great stories about how this wizard gets into these really complex situations and finds ways to solve it, using magic instead of brawn or, magic healing, things like that. Look at characters like Elminster from the Forgotten Realms and what's else? Oh, Kavoth from Kingkiller Chronicles, right? These two guys spend a lot of time on their own, like as clerics. Well, Elminster as a cleric, and then as thieves, they've both done that, and then eventually as wizards, but they all have these kind of interesting ways to like solve their problems, right? Although these two characters are kind of like, particular characters are kind of like super characters, right? They kind of can do a little bit of everything. And that's a good way to go too, if you want a very self-sufficient character, right? But I think having a character with a lot of weaknesses and overcoming situations that would normally be very difficult for a character in that situation make for a lot of drama and great memories, right? So don't be afraid to allow the player to be in situations that are, that would normally be for like a thief or having a thief in the party, but they've got to find a way to disarm the trap with their other abilities or their mind or some clever way. And I think that's really good. Another thing with NPCs, make sure if there are multiple NPCs and the player's trying to get advice for them, that you keep a separation between NPC knowledge and DM knowledge, right? You want the NPC to answer questions based on their own personality and knowledge. So if they're like a dwarven warrior or a human barbarian, maybe they want to solve things by fighting. We'll just fight our way through them. We'll just bust down that wall, right? Or if they're a rogue that likes to be sneaky and likes to avoid combat, maybe the plan is to sneak around and avoid, right? Or maybe another character wants to like just talk it out and, find a peaceful solution, right? And then if there's multiple NPCs that they're getting advice from, eventually they'll turn to the player and be like, so what do you think, right? And then suddenly it's their job to make the decision, right? If you want to see a really good example of this, you can watch Matt Colville's video where he runs Vorkis through a kind of a solo campaign to help him not reunite, but help him join the party in one of the games. that he was running. Put the link down below. And it's a really good example of using an NPC to help the player learn about their character, help the player kind of grow, and to provide information without overly influencing the player's choices, right? The NPCs there, they have information, they have opinions, but they don't create the situation where like, oh, well, now that the NPC has told me this, I know the obvious course of action. The player still has choices, right? And that choice is very important, to have some freedom, unless they don't want choice. Maybe they just want a very cinematic, like, I'm awesome campaign. That's an option too. But I think giving them that choice and giving them agency is a really good and lends to good stories. Give the player the choice of whether or not they want NPCs to stay with them, right? Certainly they'll intersect with NPC storylines and they'll like adventure together, probably, at least sometimes. But when a natural point for them to split up happens, let it happen and give the player the choice, if they want to help if they meet up with some dwarven cleric who's on a quest and their quests coincide for a little while and then it gets to the end and suddenly, they're branching and the dwarf needs to go here, the player needs to go here. And it's like, well, it's been good adventuring with you. I wish you luck and we'll see you again. Maybe, hopefully. Or the player could be like, you know what, I'm going to help you with your quest and let's go together. Or I really need you for this quest. Come with me. So maybe they'll go do the player's quest or the dwarf's quest, right? Together. And then later on they'll go to the other one and finish that, Or maybe they'll decide that the other quest that they had was not super important. I think giving the player that choice, not just saddling them with the NPC that you want them to have, that you feel like they need to have. And I think it's also fun to have a kind of a cast of characters, right? So they meet this dwarven cleric this one time, and then they meet this elven bard this other time. And then suddenly, as they meet people and they separate from them, suddenly like these people are going off into the world, having their own stories. And when they meet up again, it's like, oh, I was off doing this. I need your help with this now, right? I think it's especially good if you have NPCs with them to give the NPCs flaws that cause problems for the player, right? Or are not beneficial to the player. Maybe there's an elven bard with them, but the bard doesn't fight, right? So in combat situations, the player is forced to protect the bard. It lets the player be awesome, right, at the thing that they do, right? Or maybe it's a loudmouth warrior who is always picking fights at the wrong time, I think it creates a lot of moments for the player to be like, oh, maybe I don't want this person with me, or if they really like the character, like, this is something that I've decided that I want to deal with, And it creates these opportunities for adventure, fun, and drama. Speaking about bards that can't fight, another thing that changes a lot is combat. For this video, we're focusing on 5th edition. So because of the action economy of 5th edition, a large group of weak monsters can be much more deadly than a single strong monster, right? So it's important to be wary of overwhelming a single character by themselves, right? If they get too many crits against them, or if the monsters happen to have like control abilities or paralysis abilities or something like that, it can be really a bad day for a player. So just consider that when building your encounters, and when you're learning how to balance the encounters, err on the side of an easier encounter versus a more difficult one to start. Then work your way up. There are some great optional rules, especially if the player's a warrior, right? There's an optional rule for cleavings. I think there's different ways to do it. So either you can just apply the remaining damage to an adjacent enemy, or you could allow the player a new attack against a nearby enemy, right? Or you could say, oh, you can do a cleave action, and if the enemies are all adjacent to you and all in a row, you can make an attack against each of them. And if any of the attacks miss, you can't make attacks against further monsters down the line, right? To let the player take on like larger groups, I think it's a kind of a cool idea. And remember, when you're deciding how many encounters to have, that combat will also probably move along much faster unless you're sending hordes against them or putting like 5 NPCs in the party with them, right? A good option is to maybe allow the player to run the NPCs. And then this is kind of another good reason to have like kind of a rotating cast of NPCs. So the player actually gets to also experience a lot of different other player skills and powers. So that could be interesting for them as well. But again, be sure to don't overestimate how long combat's going to take, right? Comparing it to like a 3 to 5 person party. One player will probably be much faster, especially if they get good at just playing out their turn, you know. And don't be afraid to be a lot more cinematic with combat, right? About, you know, all the big hits, you know, describing where and how they hit, where and how the player hits the monster, and to kind of fill in some of that time and also make it more epic. All right, and speaking of epic, some things I've been thinking of is taking the rules for legendary monsters and basically applying them to a player, right? So, like a boon, I think I would call it either Mark of the Hero or the Chosen One, something like that. Basically like a feat, but it's a boon that they get for like either just being the Chosen One at the start of the game, they just get it because they're like Harry Potter or whatever, or they earn it. Some cool things I've seen are like there's a helpless fawn caught in brambles, and the hero, you know, reaches into the brambles, gets cut up, but helps the fawn free, and then the fey creatures in the area realize that this guy's a good guy, and they bless him with the mark of a hero or something like that, and he's suddenly the protector of the forest, and he gets some special abilities. Or there's a princess, she's been separated from her guards, being chased by kidnappers, and the player intervenes and saves the princess, right? And he later learns there's a prophecy about a man that, about a hero that saves the princess, who's the chosen one, chosen to fight the great evil, right? And then they get this boon, which, again, Mark of the Hero or Chosen One or whatever you want, whatever is appropriate at the time. And they get what's called a hero point, or whatever kind of point you want to call it. Hero points, I think, works well. And either they start with like 1 or 3. Maybe they get more and more as they complete like certain milestones, certain special quests as part of the prophecy, or helping more and more important beings, something like that. And so the idea behind these hero points is that they're used kind of like legendary resistances or legendary actions, right? Legendary actions help legendary monsters fight large groups of players, right? So why not give a player a form of that, calling them heroic actions, right? And they can spend a hero point to do a heroic action, which they can use it to either get an extra action, or make an extra reaction, or get advantage on a roll, or maybe they could either re-roll a saving throw or automatically succeed on a saving throw, depending on how you want the mechanic to work. And unlike legendary actions, I wouldn't want them to refresh every round, probably, unless you want your player to be like Superman, just annihilating, you know, monsters left and right? But you could. So I think either they can use their hero points pool once a session, if you want it more powerful, once a day, like luck, or if you want them really powerful, they refresh every round and keep the number low, and they just do epic things every round, just annihilating monsters. But yeah, that's just my crazy idea for how to make solo campaign for a player who wants to be a warrior, or any kind of, a solo campaign for a player who likes combat, right? It doesn't matter what kind of character they have, right? A character like casting like tons of spells left and right could be super epic too, be very powerful too. But I think there's nothing wrong with that, having like a uber powerful campaign. I think that's super cool. Playing that kind of campaign and learning how to balance an encounter against a single player that's super powerful. But yeah, so that's the video on solo campaigns. Thanks for watching. I hope you found something interesting. If you have any comments, questions, or suggestions, put them down in the comments below. And just thanks again for watching. And remember, be reasonable and have fun. Thank you.